Hey everybody, it's tafony here once again. Hope you are doing well. Today we're rambling about the ALM MFD. It is a 6 HP stereo crossfader for your rack, and it sounds like this. Okay, ALM MFD, it's a 6 HP stereo crossfader. Right now I am going to show you a couple things in its most basic patch, I would say. We have a stereo source on the right, which is a submix of drums. I'll bring it in here. It is nothing super exciting. Just a submix from the soundstage to sort of give it some stereo spatialization. I'm running a mono input on the left side just to demonstrate that you can mix stereo and mono sources this way, and it'll sort of handle that for you, which I appreciate as well. So if we crossfade over now to the ecto core, yeah, for performance-wise, this is what I like to do with the X fade, but obviously 3U, and this, I don't know if it's the curve or the knob itself, but maybe the size of the knob itself, it's just really tasty to, you know, it's pleasant, I guess is the word, to crossfade between these two. Now, these aren't beat synced or anything, like I've mentioned a couple times. It's kind of impossible to do that on the ecto core. I just want to demonstrate sort of the curve between the two. Just do this real slow. Go all the way over. that was convenient timing for that. If you go back early enough in tafony videos, this was how I crossfaded between the Euro rack and my mic. We've moved that elsewhere now. You do get CV control over this crossfade, so I'll send an LFO. So there's some DJ style stuff you want to do with that. You know, if you want to do some performative stuff, let's pretend this was beat synced. Or, I mean, another performative thing we could do with this is go back to here, and if instead of, maybe I'll take my kick out of the mix, I'll put my kick in the left side, and then as a DJ style tool, if you want to look cool and not like a tool on Instagram or something, just crossfade over to my kick. Might be a little too sparse on the other track. Let's bring some more trigs in. And go back to the kick. Yeah. And again, because the inputs cascade down, I don't need to stereolize, I guess, or mult my mono input. I can just throw it in on the left, which is super cool. And then this is a better use of this patch, I would say. Let's crossfade with an LFO. Yeah. Let's do a slower LFO maybe. Let's go triangle LFO and do it real slow. Yeah. That's fun. The other thing, I don't know, I'm curious. Let's do audio rate. Just see what happens with that. Yeah. Why not? Audio rate LFO. Let's go way down though. Yeah. I mean, just to say, I mean, that's the most modular thing ever, but there is some really cool things to be had on that front. Let's try another one. I don't know. Let's go squares. The squares just means it's snapping very abruptly between shapes. If you do triangle, it'll be smoother. That's cool. Yeah, X-Fade. Now, I sort of like, it does provide an opportunity to do some super cool mixing stuff, performative stuff that you might not have landed on internally. I do think sort of the idea, if I could say that, is to do this performatively like DJ style, right? I'll bring in a DJ filter elsewhere. Like this. Yeah. And kicks. So, yeah, I find that really, really cool. And so, I mean, it's not super complicated, but I find it really powerful. If we take our kick out, and maybe we'll just mix that back into our submix of the other thing, and I'll show you some creative patching ideas. Now, I'm generally of the mind that, like, I like my modules to sort of show the functionality, if that makes any sense. I know there's always like lots of cool demos of people doing like really creative stuff and making secondary use of other stuff. I'm kind of like of the utilitarian mindset that like I'd kind of prefer a module that does what I'm about to describe. But, you know, I think it's fun to demonstrate, fun to explore, and some people really like doing these sort of things. It is kind of like in the modular ethos, I guess, to sort of take one thing and use it for another, just like I was doing with audio rate of other stuff. So with that being said, we get these cue outs now. I think sort of in the DJ style use of it, the thought would be to like hook it up to a headphone out module or monitor it somewhere so I could go in, you know, hey, we're listening to the right output on the B side. I could come in here, patch out our cue output to headphones, listen to it, kind of get it ready, if that makes any sense. Now, that would make sense in the case of that Ectocore. I could sort of try and get it into tapping tempo, trying to sync it up in beats a little bit, but just that's the traditional way to use that. I have yet to really do anything with that. I was always just kind of like crossfading it. But let's talk about some other unique, creative uses for that. One thing you can do is we'll take out a oscillator here. Maybe let's just go a triangle wave from the 3-body. I know that's very exciting, right? But what you can do is use it as a VCA. If I take a, I don't know, ramp wave, might be envelope-esque, and come into the X fade, then you get a linear VCA. And I know that isn't super exciting to watch right now, but stereo VCAs are actually kind of hard to come by in Eurorack, so MFD can be that in a pinch. But I think probably the one that I find the most unique, the most interesting, I guess, would be using it as an effects send. So let's plug back our drums. Hear that on the right channel first. In comes our left channel, and what you can do with this for a module, and I'm going to specifically point to something like the shard. Maybe we want a mono in for this because that does not have stereo in. If you have effects that aren't mixable, like this FFS beside it, now that's not the best example because you can kind of dial into a more useful spot, I would say. Something like the shard, we're going to use this. Now pretend you had a stereo effect, pretend that we had a stereo source coming in. Maybe I'm just going to do a mono input for now. Let's listen to that. I can use my Q out. We'll take the left output, run that into our shard, and because the shard doesn't have a mix, I'm going to mix it back in. So we're going to select QB. So right now we're sending that Q out, and then we're going to return it on the A. Right? So when I'm in A, and I'm listening to B fully, I'm going to zoom out here as the cables are right in the way. So you can see shard, input, returning. Maybe we'll forgo the oscilloscope for just one moment while I can see. Sorry, it is a lot of cables. Getting cables in the way of my Eurorack videos is a classic thing, and we'll crossfade this in. And as you can hear, that is insanely crazy. So let's just dial in a super insane sound while we're listening to it. So here's our dry sound, and now I have a incredibly nasty sound going on in the shard. We'll crossfade all the way over here, which I love this mangledness, this insane sound, but I definitely want to keep some fundamental, and the MFD allows me to do so by blending that in, right? Because I don't have a blend knob on the shard, I can do that. Chaos in. Chaos depleted my capacitor. There we go. Dingo ate my baby. More shard. Mixed results. There we go. Mix in more of the dry. And then, because I'm doing all that, we can take my LFO and cross mod that too. So we'll be having it doing the fading for us. Yeah. Love that for it. Crossfade in again. Use that LFO. Audio right over that. Yeah. Anyway. Yes. Very much yes. Alright, I'm going to try that with the for fuzz sake. Hey, I'm Tafony. Thank you so much for watching. It's a fun crossfading utility, the MFD. Also has some other tricks up its sleeve for creative uses that normally I'm not a huge fan of, but I really appreciate them in this case. So, hey, thank you so much. Like, comment, subscribe, do all that crap that YouTube's always on my case about. And I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.